Alright, hi guys and gals. We're going to do some practice with diagramming VGs, VCs, and two-word transitive verbs. So, what we got to see is what these verbs are. So remember that a VG is the verb of giving, and our sentence formula is we're going to have a noun phrase, we're going to have our verb of giving, and then we need to have two words after it. We're going to have our indirect object and our direct object. Okay? And that's pretty easy. But this is where we're going to hit a problem, is sometimes we're going to reverse it and we're going to have a prepositional phrase. So that would be a direct object, and then it would be a prepositional phrase with the indirect object. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's look at an example. I gave Susan my number. Okay, pretty simple. We always start with sentence. We always have our subject and our predicate. Now, I am going to point this out. You don't have to do it yet, but I would like you to get in the habit of putting PN for when you have pronouns instead of nouns. Okay? Then we have our verb. Our verb is a VG. Gave. All of this is stuff that we've done before. Pretty easy, right? Okay, but here's where we have a problem. We face a new dilemma when we have two noun phrases. It's pretty easy. We're just going to say noun phrase, indirect object, which that is Susan, and noun phrase, direct object. Now we have two pieces here. We have the adjective, my, and then we have the noun number. All of that should look familiar to you. Yeah? Okay, good. Now we're going to go in and look at the example and how you diagram prepositional phrases. Okay? This is where we get some trouble. What if I was to switch this and I was going to say, I gave my number to Susan? Okay? We need to just learn how to do prepositional phrases, and this is what I want you to look at, okay? I gave my number to Susan. Let's see what we do. We always start with sentence, noun phrase, subject, verb phrase, predicate. We have a pronoun, which is I, right? We have a VG, which is gave. We now have a noun phrase, which is our direct object, right? Because we're switching the order, the direct object. We have an adjective, my, and we have a noun number. Okay, but here we hit something new. We have a prepositional phrase, okay? So I want to show you, how do you mark a prepositional phrase? Well, first you're going to say prep phrase, and then as its function, what you're going to do is you're going to put a colon, and every prepositional phrase can operate a little bit differently. Often it's either an adverb, phrase, or whatever, but you want to say who is it's describing. Now, right now, it's serving as who receives it. So we're going to write receive, because it's going to hold our indirect object. And for every prepositional phrase of receive, we have the indirect object. We won't always have that because we won't always have a prepositional phrase of receive. And I'll show you some more examples. Prepositional phrases are going to come up a lot. So this is what you need to do when you hit a prepositional phrase. First, you need to mark the preposition. This is to. And then, remember, you're always going to have the preposition, and then you're going to have a noun phrase which is the object of the preposition. And when you say the object of something, you put a slash. So it's OBJ, which is object, slash, which means of, and then you have preposition. Okay? It's a noun, and it's Susan. You see that? I want you to take a note. Look at how these two diagrams are relatively different from one another. I gave Susan my number, okay? We always have the indirect object because if I ask the question, what did I give? I didn't give Susan. I gave my number. So my number is the direct object, okay? But who did I give it to? That's my indirect object. That's Susan, okay? I gave my number to Susan, okay? Pretty much the same, except this becomes the direct object instead of the indirect object. And then here's where you really want to see is prepositional phrase. Now, what I want to point out is this is a prepositional phrase of receive, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's the prepositional phrase adverb phrase or adjective phrase. So the things you generally need to know is you need to have the preposition, and then you need to put NP for noun phrase, object of the preposition, okay? And that leads us through our first section, which is diagramming VGs. Okay, on to more stuff. We're going to do diagramming VCs. So, VC. This is the verb of consider. And here we have some options. We always have a noun phrase, the verb consider, and then we always have an object complement, but the object complement could be a noun phrase, an adjective phrase, or an infinitive. Okay? So you need to kind of see that. So I'm going to use the same beginning, but I'm going to change it depending on what I have. So I'm going to have, I consider Susan. Oh, and I forgot something. Your direct object. We always have to have our direct object. Sorry, guys. You always have to have your direct object. I consider Susan. Okay? And then I'm going to fill in the blank. So I consider Susan a friend. I consider Susan smart. Or I consider Susan to be sweet. Okay? This phrase right here is a noun phrase. This is an adjective. And this is a infinitive phrase. All of these are going to start the same way. I'm going to have a sentence, noun phrase subject, pronoun. I'm putting PN because I is a pronoun, so getting in the habit of using pronoun if you can. Then we're going to have verb phrase predicate. We're going to have VC, consider. We're going to have noun phrase direct object, noun Susan. All of those are going to be the same. Now, this is where you need to see the difference. So just keep that in mind. All of that's going to stay the same. But this part over here, this is where it's going to change a little bit. It's pretty easy. You simply put one or the other in. So, if I put a noun or an adjective here, if I put a noun, I could say noun phrase, object complement, right? And then I would have my article, a, and my noun, friend. Right? Got it? But if I have an adjective, I say adjective, object complement, I put adjective, and then I would put smart. Okay? Good? Here's where it gets a bit tricky, is when we do an infinitive phrase. So I need you to see that. So we'd have an infinitive phrase, object of the object complement. Then what you're going to do is you're going to have infinitive, and the infinitive is 2 words because it's always to be, to see, to whatever. You're going to have to be, and then you're going to have the whatever comes after it. It could be a noun, it could be whatever. Here we have an adjective because I'm saying to be what? Okay? To be. We have an infinitive phrase, and then we have an adjective. To be sweet. Do you see that? It's set up all the same, but then we add that in. Okay. Last thing for us to see is the difference between a 2-word transitive verb and a prepositional phrase. So